I never believed in ghosts. That was until that Halloween night last year when everything changed. It was the perfect night for a horror story. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the gnarled trees that seemed to whisper secrets in the cold wind. My friends and I decided to take a shortcut through an old graveyard, part dare, part thrill. We laughed and joked, but deep down I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. As we wandered through the narrow path lined with crumbling tombstones, a chill swept over me, different from the cool night air. It felt alive. I laughed it off, trying to appear brave in front of my friends. "Just a bunch of rocks and dirt," I said, waving my hand dismissively. But even as I spoke, the atmosphere thickened, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing at attention. We reached the center of the graveyard, where an ancient oak tree loomed over a particularly old gravestone. My friend Jake, ever the jokester, dared me to read the inscription aloud. I hesitated, feeling an inexplicable urge to turn back, but pride got the best of me. I stepped closer, flashlight in hand, the beam flickering against the stone. "Here lies Margaret Holloway," I read, my voice echoing in the stillness. "Born in 1822, departed in 1844. May her spirit find peace." A sudden gust of wind sent a shiver down my spine, extinguishing my flashlight momentarily. In the darkness, I could have sworn I heard a faint whisper, like a breath brushing against my ear. I froze, my heart pounding. "Dude, stop messing around," Jake shouted, but I hadn't said a word. The air felt heavier, like we were being watched. I turned to my friends, but their faces were pale, eyes wide with fear. It was then that I noticed the shadows around us. Long, twisting shapes that seemed to crawl closer. "Let's go," I urged, trying to sound brave. But just as we turned to leave, the ground beneath us trembled slightly, and the shadows thickened. They swirled around our feet, pulling at our shoes, as if trying to keep us there. "Did you feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah, we need to get out of here," I replied, panic rising in my chest. We ran, but the whispers grew louder, echoing our fear. Stay with us," they called, the voices soft yet commanding. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, wrapping around us, urging us to listen. We stumbled through the graveyard, our laughter turned to screams. The path twisted in a way I hadn't remembered, leading us deeper into the maze of gravestones. I could see the exit, but every time we got close, it felt like something was pulling us back. The shadows danced, dark tendrils reaching out, taunting us. Just then, I caught sight of something, a figure standing beneath the oak tree. It was a woman, her pale skin glowing in the moonlight. Her eyes were hollow, and her mouth moved silently as if trying to speak. I couldn't look away, even as my instincts screamed at me to run. She raised her hand, pointing directly at me. "Margaret," I blurted out, my voice hoarse. The legends had spoken of her spirit, trapped between worlds, seeking something she never found. But what could she want from me? Suddenly the shadows surged forward, a whirlwind of darkness that enveloped me. I felt myself being pulled towards the figure, my friends' terrified faces fading into the darkness. "Help!" I screamed, but the whispers grew louder, drowning out my pleas. "Stay, stay," they echoed, wrapping around my mind. I was lost in the shadows, and in that moment I felt Margaret's presence, a coldness that seeped into my bones. I could see flashes of her life, moments of joy, despair, and longing. She was searching, always searching. Then came a terrifying realization. She was looking for something to hold on to, something to bring her peace. But what could I offer her? In a moment of clarity, I reached deep within myself and recalled the stories I had heard about her. "You are not forgotten, Margaret. Your story lives on," I cried out, feeling the shadows tremble at my words. "Let go of your pain." The shadows hesitated, swirling around me as if pondering my plea. I felt a sudden weight lift, a faint glimmer of light breaking through the darkness. Margaret's figure seemed to shift, her hollow eyes narrowing as she regarded me. I could see a flicker of hope spark within her. "Let her go," I shouted again, feeling a surge of determination. "You are free, Margaret. You don't have to linger here." As if responding to my words, the shadows began to recede. I felt the grip around me loosen, and the figure stepped forward, her face softening. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing like a gentle breeze. And then, with a radiant smile, she dissolved into a shower of light, illuminating the graveyard in a warm glow. The darkness lifted completely, and I found myself standing alone under the old oak tree. My friends emerged from the shadows, confusion etched on their faces. "What just happened?" Jake asked, breathless. I think I helped her," I stammered, my heart still racing. She just wanted to be remembered. As we stumbled out of the graveyard, the air felt lighter, the night less foreboding. We didn't speak much as we walked back to our neighborhood, each of us lost in our thoughts. I could still hear the faint whisper of the wind, but this time it was different, more like a soft goodbye than a call for help. That Halloween night changed me. I never doubted the existence of spirits again. I understood that sometimes the past lingers, whispering in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. As I write this, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, Margaret Holloway finally found her peace, and I played a small part in her story. And as for me, well, I'll never take another shortcut through a graveyard again. Story, the end.
Story number 2.
It was supposed to be a night of fun. A Halloween party at my friend Emily's house. She had gone all out, transforming her living room into a haunted mansion, complete with cobwebs, skeleton decorations, and a fog machine that spilled mist across the floor. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I arrived a bit late, the crisp autumn air nipping at my skin. As I stepped inside, the sounds of laughter and music enveloped me, but there was a strange chill in the air. Emily greeted me with a smile, but I noticed a flicker of worry in her eyes. "Glad you made it." "I was starting to think everyone would bail," she said, her voice laced with forced cheer. The party was in full swing, with friends dressed in costumes that ranged from the terrifying to the absurd. We danced, we laughed, but the shadows in the corners seemed to grow darker as the night wore on. I caught glimpses of Emily's gaze shifting toward the windows, her smile fading whenever she thought no one was watching. "Is everything okay?" I asked her when I could steal her away from the crowd. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "Yeah, just strange things have been happening. I heard noises earlier, like someone was in the house," she whispered, anxiety creeping into her voice. "But it's probably just my imagination." "Probably just the wind," I replied, trying to ease her mind, but deep down I felt an unsettling sensation creeping into my stomach. As the clock struck 11, we gathered around for some spooky stories, the kind that were meant to thrill but left an unease hanging in the air. Just as Emily began recounting an urban legend about a local haunted house, the lights flickered, plunging us into near darkness. A collective gasp echoed through the room, followed by nervous laughter. "Great timing, right?" Jake quipped, trying to lighten the mood. But as he spoke, a low thud resonated from somewhere deep within the house, causing us all to freeze. The laughter died, replaced by an uneasy silence. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her wide eyes darting toward the hallway. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered back to life, revealing a shadow standing at the end of the corridor. My heart raced. It was just a trick of the light, I told myself, but the figure looked too real. "Who's there?" Emily called out, her voice shaky. No one answered. The shadow shifted, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement. Something dark darting away. I exchanged worried glances with my friends. "We should check it out," I suggested, though I wasn't sure who was trying to convince whom. We crept down the hallway, the floorboards creaking under our feet. Emily led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. We reached the living room, but everything appeared normal. Too normal. Yet the air felt thick, charged with an unshakable tension. "Maybe it was just the wind, or a branch tapping against the window," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, the front door swung open with a loud bang, slamming against the wall. We jumped back, gasping. There was no one outside, only the wind rustling the leaves on the trees. "Okay, that's creepy," Jake muttered, backing away from the door. "Let's just go back to the party," I suggested, my heart pounding. "This is ridiculous." As we turned to head back, the lights flickered again, and I caught sight of something, a fleeting shadow darting across the wall, almost like it was playing with us. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Emily nodded slowly. "Let's get everyone together," she said, clearly shaken. "We need to stick together." We made our way back to the living room, where the others were still gathered, oblivious to the strangeness unfolding. But, as we tried to explain, another loud crash echoed from the kitchen, the sound of dishes shattering against the floor. Panic erupted, and we all rushed toward the noise. When we arrived, the kitchen was in disarray, broken plates scattered across the floor, chairs overturned, but there was no sign of an intruder. "This is insane!" Sarah cried, her voice rising in fear. "What's going on?" As we stood there, trying to make sense of it all, the temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath misting in front of me. A low, guttural whisper slithered through the air, chilling us to the bone. "Leave." My heart raced. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, gripping Emily's arm. She nodded, fear etched on her face. "Who are you?" Emily called out. trying to sound brave, but her voice wavered. "What do you want?" "Leave. Now," the voice repeated, echoing off the walls. It felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. In a moment of adrenaline-fueled panic, I shouted, "We're leaving!" I grabbed Emily's hand and the others quickly followed. We bolted for the door, adrenaline propelling us forward, but the air felt thick and suffocating, like the house itself was trying to keep us inside. As we burst through the front door, the chill of the night air hit us like a wave. We stumbled down the steps, glancing back at the house, the windows dark and foreboding. But in one of the upper windows, I saw it, a figure standing still, watching us. It was a woman, her eyes hollow, filled with sorrow. "Go!" Emily screamed, pulling me away from the sight. We ran, not stopping until we reached the street, hearts pounding in unison. As we turned to look back one last time, the front door swung shut, as if it had never been open at all. That night changed everything. We never spoke of what happened, but we all felt it, an uninvited guest lingering in the shadows, a reminder that some places hold on to their darkness. I still think about that party every Halloween, haunted by the whisper that echoed in my mind. "Leave. Now." It's been a year, and I can't shake the feeling that the figure still watches from that window, waiting for the next unsuspecting group to step into her haunted domain. Story the end.
Story number 3.
The wind howled outside my window, rattling the panes as I sat on my bed, surrounded by a pile of Halloween decorations. I had always loved this time of year, the thrill of haunted houses, scary movies, and the anticipation of trick-or-treaters. But this Halloween felt different. The air was heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding that settled in the pit of my stomach. My friends had convinced me to go to a haunted house at the edge of town, rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a young girl who vanished without a trace decades ago. I had my reservations, but the thrill of fear was irresistible. We arrived at the house just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the crumbling facade. The air felt electric, charged with an energy that made the hairs on my arms stand up. As we entered, the door creaked ominously behind us, sealing us inside. The dim light flickered as we made our way through the narrow hallways, filled with eerie props and animatronics that leered at us as we passed. My friends laughed and screamed at every jump scare, but I felt uneasy, as if someone or something was watching us. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, pausing to listen. A faint melodic giggle echoed through the hallway, chilling me to the bone. "It's just the speakers," I said, trying to brush it off. But deep down, I felt a flicker of fear. As we moved deeper into the house, we stumbled upon a room adorned with mirrors. They lined the walls, reflecting our nervous faces and the flickering lights. The air felt colder here, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. My friends began to joke about the ghost stories surrounding the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "I dare you to stand in front of the biggest mirror," Jake challenged me, grinning mischievously. "Let's see if the ghost shows up." "Very funny," I replied, but the challenge tugged at my curiosity. Taking a deep breath, I stepped toward the largest mirror, its surface cloudy and cracked. My reflection stared back, but as I looked closer, something caught my eye, a shadow moving behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. "See? Nothing to be scared of," Jake said, nudging me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Just then, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness. A panic surged through me, and I instinctively looked into the mirror. In the reflection, I saw her, a girl in a tattered white dress, her long dark hair obscuring her face. She stood behind me, her lips twisted into a silent scream. I gasped, stumbling back, but when I turned around, she was gone. "Did you see that?" I shouted, my heart racing. "See what?" Sarah asked, looking confused. "There was a girl in the mirror," I insisted, my voice rising in panic. But my friends dismissed me, laughing at what they thought was an overactive imagination. I shook my head, trying to convince myself I was just seeing things. But as we continued through the haunted house, the feeling of dread grew stronger. The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse with life, and I could hear whispers, soft and beckoning. Eventually, we made our way back to the entrance, but the door wouldn't budge. I felt my heart race as I pushed against it, panic flooding my veins. "We have to get out of here," I shouted, my voice echoing in the silence. "Relax, it's just stuck," Jake said, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We banged on the door, shouting for help, but it felt like we were trapped in our own nightmare. As we frantically looked for another way out, I caught a glimpse of the mirror room again. The girl stood there, still watching, her expression now one of sadness rather than fear. "Help me," she mouthed, and a chill ran down my spine. "What is it?" Sarah asked, noticing my frozen expression. "There's something wrong," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I think we need to help her." But my friends were too scared to listen. "We just need to get out," Jake insisted. "Let's find another way." As we wandered through the dim hallways, I could still feel her presence, drawing me back to the mirror room. "I can't leave her," I finally said, pulling away from my friends. "What are you talking about? We're not leaving you," Jake shouted, but I was already moving back toward the mirrors, compelled by an unseen force. When I entered the room again, the air felt thick with sorrow. I approached the largest mirror, and this time, I wasn't afraid. The girl stood there, her reflection clearer now. Her eyes were filled with despair, and I could see the faint outline of chains around her wrists binding her to the mirror. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Trapped. Help me," she pleaded, her voice echoing in my mind. I reached out to touch the glass, and as my fingers brushed against the surface, a surge of energy pulsed through me. The mirrors vibrated, and I felt the weight of her sadness pressing down on me. I closed my eyes and focused, imagining breaking the chains that held her captive. "You are free," I whispered, pouring my heart into the words. The mirrors shook violently, and I could hear her cries growing louder, merging with the whispers that filled the room. In that moment, the mirrors shattered, shards of glass flying everywhere. The girl's spirit surged forward, a rush of wind swirling around me. I felt a warmth envelop me, and suddenly she was gone. The room grew quiet. The oppressive weight lifted. I turned back toward the entrance, and to my surprise, the door swung open. My friend stood there, wide-eyed and terrified. "What just happened?" Jake asked, his voice shaking. "I think I helped her," I said, my heart still racing. "She's free now." As we stumbled out of the haunted house into the cool night air, I glanced back one last time. The windows glimmered in the moonlight, but the air felt lighter, less foreboding. That Halloween night changed everything for me. I learned that sometimes the past clings to us, searching for a way to break free. I'll never forget the girl in the mirror, and I'll always be grateful for the chance to help her escape her prison. Story the end. There was something about her that felt different. An unsettling aura that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Hey," I called out, attempting to break the tension. "You can come up if you want some candy." She didn't move. Instead, she just stood there, her head slightly tilted, as if she were considering my offer. I squinted in the dim light, trying to see her face, but it remained obscured by her long hair. "Are you okay?" I asked, more concerned now. "Do you want me to call your parents?" At my words, she finally took a step forward, her bare feet silent against the cool grass. My heart raced. "What's your name?" I pressed, though a part of me was urging me to retreat inside. "Evelyn," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It sent a shiver down my spine. "Can I have candy?" "Sure. Come on up." I gestured to the porch, trying to sound more confident than I felt. But as she approached, I noticed how pale her skin was, almost glowing under the porch light, and I felt an unsettling sense of déjà vu. When she reached the bottom step, I leaned down to hand her a piece of candy, but she just stood there, staring at me with hollow eyes. "You're not scared of me?" she asked, her voice echoing in the night air. "Why would I be scared?" I laughed nervously, trying to dispel the unease settling in my chest. But her gaze held a depth that was both haunting and captivating. Suddenly, a chill swept through the air and the temperature dropped. I glanced at the bowl of candy on the porch, suddenly aware that the other houses were dark and quiet. Most of the neighborhood had turned in for the night. "Evelyn, where's your family?" I asked, my voice tinged with concern. "They don't want me anymore," she said, a trace of sadness creeping into her tone. "I'm waiting for someone to take me home." My heart raced. "Home? Where's that?" But before she could respond, the wind picked up and I shivered, feeling a strange heaviness in the air. I glanced down at the candy bowl again, and to my shock, it was empty. I had filled it just moments ago, and yet, somehow, all the candy had vanished. "Hey, where did all the candy go?" I stammered, my pulse quickening. Evelyn didn't answer. She merely stared at me, her eyes glistening in the low light. "Can I come inside?" she asked, her voice now almost pleading. "No, I think it's best if you just take your candy and go." I stood up, my instincts screaming at me to get away from her. But as I turned, she reached out, her cold fingers brushing against my wrist. A wave of dread washed over me as the temperature plummeted further. I turned back, feeling the fear clawing at my throat. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's dangerous." "Then let me in. I don't want to be alone anymore," she said, her eyes narrowing. In that moment, I felt an inexplicable pull, a connection I couldn't understand. I took a step back, my pulse pounding in my ears. Evelyn, I think you should go home. It's late and your parents are probably looking for you. I tried to sound firm, but the edge in her gaze made me hesitate. Home, she whispered, her expression shifting to one of desperation. I've been waiting for so long. Suddenly, memories flooded my mind. A story my grandmother used to tell me about a girl who had gone missing on Halloween night, trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead. Evelyn? I gasped, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. Help me, she interrupted, her voice trembling. I just want to go home. I looked around, the once comforting surroundings now feeling like a trap. The air grew thicker, and shadows danced around us, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. I felt a knot of fear tightening in my chest, and I knew I had to make a choice. No, I can't help you, I shouted, suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of panic. You're not real. Her expression darkened, and the shadows grew closer, wrapping around her like a shroud. You can't run from me, she screamed, her voice echoing in the night, reverberating with a sadness that tore at my heart. I bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock. I could feel her presence behind me, cold and unyielding. Just as I managed to open the door, I turned back, my heart racing. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I wish I could help. I dashed inside, slamming the door shut and locking it tight. I leaned against it, breathless, my heart pounding. But through the window, I could see her standing there, unmoving, her eyes filled with a deep sorrow. Hours passed, and eventually I crept to my bedroom, trying to shake off the encounter. The sounds of Halloween had faded, and silence enveloped the house. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I would never see her again, but just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard a soft tapping at my window. My blood ran cold. Go away, I yelled, burying my head in my pillow. Please, let me in, a soft voice called from outside, echoing in my mind. I froze, paralyzed with fear. I knew deep down that it was Evelyn. She was still there, waiting for me, hoping I would help her escape the torment of her existence. I took a deep breath, knowing there was no way I could ignore her. As I lay there, I realized that Halloween wasn't just a night for candy and costumes. It was also a reminder of the souls that lingered, the ones trapped between our world and theirs. In that moment, I knew I couldn't turn my back on her again. But what could I do? How could I help a spirit trapped in a realm of shadows? As the tapping continued, I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. Perhaps it was time to confront the darkness that lingered, not just for Evelyn, but for all those who had been forgotten. I rose from my bed and approached the window, steeling myself. I'll help you, I whispered into the night, but you have to promise to let me go.
Story number 5.
Every Halloween, the small town of Ravenswood transformed into a playground of the macabre. The streets filled with carved pumpkins, cobwebs, and skeletons. Children ran amok in their costumes, laughter echoing through the air, but behind the excitement lurked a darkness that most didn't see. I, however, had always been drawn to the legends of the town. As a teenager, I'd often read about the infamous Ravenswood Asylum, a decaying building on the outskirts of town that had been abandoned for decades. The tales told of the tortured souls who once roamed its halls, patients who had been neglected and abused, their screams echoing through the night. Many said their spirits still lingered, waiting for someone to remember them. This Halloween, my friends dared me to explore the asylum. It'll be fun. Just a little adventure, they insisted, their eyes glimmering with mischief. I hesitated, but the pull of the stories was too strong. I couldn't resist the allure of uncovering the truth behind the legends. As darkness fell, we set off, armed with flashlights and an old camera. The chill in the air wrapped around us like a shroud as we approached the crumbling facade of the asylum. The wind howled through the broken windows, a haunting symphony that sent shivers down my spine. Are you sure we should be doing this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Oh, come on. It's just an old building, Sarah said, rolling her eyes. What's the worst that could happen? I didn't answer. The stories of the lost souls whispered through my mind, but I shook them off, determined to prove my bravery. We pushed the heavy door open, the sound of creaking wood echoing through the empty halls. Dust motes danced in our flashlight beams, and the air smelled of mildew and decay. I felt a weight settle in my chest, as if the building itself was alive, watching us. Let's split up and meet back here in 30 minutes, Jake suggested, his voice tinged with excitement. That way we can cover more ground. No way. We stick together, I said, feeling the unease grow. But one by one, my friends agreed with Jake, and soon I found myself reluctantly following them deeper into the asylum. We wandered through dimly lit hallways, our flashlights illuminating peeling wallpaper and rusted medical equipment. The atmosphere felt oppressive, and I could almost hear the whispers of the forgotten souls swirling around us. As we entered what appeared to be a common room, I felt a sudden chill, and my breath hitched. In the corner of the room stood an old, cracked mirror. Its surface was smudged and dirty, but I could see faint shapes moving within it. My heart raced, and I stepped closer, compelled to look. In the reflection, I saw the room behind me, but then the image shifted. A figure appeared, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her face pale and gaunt. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the surface of the glass. I gasped, stumbling back. "Guys, you need to see this!" But when they rushed over, the mirror showed only our confused faces. "What are you talking about?" Sarah asked, bewildered. "There was a woman. She was right here," I insisted, but my friends exchanged skeptical glances. "You're just seeing things," Jake said dismissively. Frustrated, I turned back to the mirror, my pulse racing. The woman's face had vanished, but I could feel her presence lingering, a chill that whispered through the air. "I think we should get out of here," I said, panic rising in my chest. "Come on, it's Halloween. Don't be such a baby," Jake teased, pushing me toward the hallway. I reluctantly followed, but the unease clung to me like a shadow. We moved deeper into the asylum, exploring room after room filled with forgotten remnants of the past. As we wandered, I noticed the atmosphere growing heavier, the air thick with an unshakable dread. My skin prickled as if I was being watched, and I could hear faint murmurs echoing in the distance. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, stopping in my tracks. "Hear what?" Sarah asked, rolling her eyes again. "Let's go back," I urged, but Jake insisted on pressing forward. We finally reached the infirmary, a room filled with rusty beds and medical equipment scattered like discarded toys. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from behind us, and we turned to see the door slamming shut. "What the hell?" I yelled, rushing to the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Great! We're trapped!" Sarah exclaimed, panic creeping into her voice. "Don't worry, it's just a malfunction. We'll figure it out," Jake said, trying to sound brave, but I could see the fear in his eyes. As we banged on the door, desperate for escape, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a storm. Shadows danced along the walls, and I felt a cold breeze pass through, sending shivers down my spine. "Help us." The voice was soft yet haunting, resonating in my mind. I froze, realizing it wasn't just the wind, it was the spirits of the asylum, trapped and forgotten. "Who's there?" I shouted, fear clawing at my throat. "Help us," the voice echoed again, and filling the room with a chilling resonance. "Guys, we need to get out of here. Now!" I urged, desperation rising. Suddenly a figure appeared in the doorway, a nurse, her face pale and eyes hollow. She beckoned to us, her expression filled with sadness. "Help them." "Who?" I shouted, panic surging within me. "What do you want from us?" "Help the lost, the forgotten," she whispered before vanishing into thin air. "What just happened?" Jake exclaimed, backing away from the door. "And I don't know, but we have to get out," I insisted. I grabbed the door handle again, pulling with all my strength, and this time it creaked open. We stumbled into the hallway, our hearts pounding. The whispers intensified, echoing in my ears, pleading for help. The further we ran, the more I could feel the weight of the spirits pressing against us, their sorrow palpable. "Wait," Sarah called out, skidding to a halt. "We can't just leave them." "Are you crazy?" I shouted, my voice filled with fear. "They're trapped for a reason. We have to go." But as I turned to grab her arm, I saw it, a reflection in the broken glass of the hallway. The woman from the mirror stood there, surrounded by others, patients, nurses, all reaching out, their faces twisted in anguish. "Help us," they cried in unison, their voices rising like a haunting chorus. In that moment, I felt the weight of their suffering, a desperate yearning for recognition. I understood then that they weren't just spirits, they were the forgotten ones, lost in time. "Fine," I yelled, feeling the weight of the moment crashing down on me. "What do we do?" "Light a candle. We need to honor them," Sarah shouted, her eyes wide with determination. "Where?" I yelled back, scanning the room frantically. "There's a chapel. It's just down the hall." Jake pointed, and without a second thought, we sprinted toward it. We burst through the door into the chapel, like a room filled with dust and decay, but still an eerie beauty lingered. I spotted an old altar, a few candles scattered across it, and I quickly lit one, feeling its warm glow push back the darkness. As the flame flickered to life, the air shifted and the whispers quieted, replaced by a soft, gentle hum. The spirits materialized around us, their faces now calm, their eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," the woman said, stepping forward, her form now radiant. You have remembered us." In that moment, I felt a surge of warmth enveloping us, and one by one, the spirits began to fade, their expressions transforming from sorrow to peace. As the last spirit vanished, the air grew still, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The asylum was silent now, a haunting stillness that wrapped around us like a comforting embrace. "Let's go," I whispered, knowing we had done something profound. We stepped outside into the cool night air, the moon illuminating the path before us. The town of Ravenswood was eerily quiet, and I could still feel the spirits lingering in my heart. That Halloween, I learned that the stories of the forgotten ones were not just tales, they were pleas for remembrance. I vowed to honor them and share their stories, so they would never be forgotten again. Story the end.
Story number 6.
The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows of Maplewood Manor as I sat in the dusty living room, the only light coming from a flickering candle. It was Halloween night, and I was alone, having volunteered to house sit for my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, who had gone to visit her family for the holiday. The manor had always been a source of strange tales in our small town, whispers of hauntings and shadows moving in the night. I had heard them all, but I dismissed them as mere folklore. As I settled into the worn, overstuffed armchair, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, and the shadows seemed to twist and contort in the flickering candlelight. I tried to focus on my book, but every creak of the old house made me jump, each sound amplified in the heavy silence. I heard a faint whisper like the rustle of a forgotten memory just beyond the edge of my hearing. I brushed it off, blaming my imagination. As the hours passed and the wind grew fiercer, I decided to explore the manor. I stood up, the candlelight flickering ominously around me. I moved cautiously down the narrow hallway, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the oppressive quiet. The walls were lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow my every move. I shivered as I approached a door at the end of the hall, slightly ajar, revealing a dim light. Pushing the door open, I found myself in a library filled with dusty books and faded leather chairs. A large fireplace dominated one wall, its embers still glowing softly. But what caught my attention was a large mirror hanging above the mantel. The glass was clouded with age, but as I approached, I noticed something strange. My reflection looked distorted, not quite right. I reached out to touch the glass, and the moment my fingers brushed its surface, a cold rush of air swept through the room, extinguishing my candle. I gasped, stumbling back into the darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my phone, the dim light casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I turned back to the mirror, I saw it, a figure standing behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Heart racing, I turned back to the mirror, and there she was again, clearer this time. A woman in a flowing white dress, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her face pale and sorrowful. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible, echoing in my mind. I was frozen, caught between fear and curiosity. "Please, find the truth. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. The reflection smiled faintly, and for a moment I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, a longing that resonated deep within my soul. "My name is Eliza," she said, her voice a haunting melody. "I was trapped here long ago, a victim of betrayal. You must uncover what happened." Before I could respond, the mirror rippled and the room seemed to warp around me. I stumbled back, the world spinning. When the dizziness faded, I found myself standing in the same library, but it felt different. Alive with energy. I could hear whispers, fragments of conversations floating through the air like ghosts of the past. "Where am I?" I whispered, confusion settling in. Eliza's figure appeared beside me, more solid now, her expression one of determination. "You're in the past," she explained, her eyes locked onto mine. "You must see what transpired, the events that bind me to this place." The air shimmered, and suddenly, the library was filled with people, elegantly dressed guests, laughing and dancing, unaware of the darkness lurking just beyond their joy. I stood frozen, a spectator to a scene unfolding before me. In one corner I saw Eliza, vibrant and alive, her laughter ringing like a bell. But my heart sank as I spotted another figure, a man with cold, calculating eyes watching her with a possessive intensity. "William," Eliza whispered, her voice laced with sorrow. "He was my fiancé, but he was not who he seemed." As the scene continued, I watched in horror as William pulled Eliza aside, his demeanor shifting from charming to menacing. I felt a cold grip of dread as he accused her of betrayal, his voice rising in anger. Eliza's eyes widened with fear, and she tried to defend herself, but her words were drowned out by the laughter and music around them. "Please, "You must believe me," she cried, but William's fury ignited, and he pushed her away, his expression twisted with rage. I could feel the anguish radiating from Eliza, the pain of being misunderstood. The scene shifted again, and I found myself outside the manor, the night dark and oppressive. I watched helplessly as William confronted Eliza one final time. They argued fiercely, and in a fit of rage, he pushed her toward the edge of a cliff behind the manor. I gasped, feeling the weight of despair as she stumbled and fell, her scream echoing through the night. "Help me," she whispered again, and I could feel her pain seeping into my bones. "You must tell my story. I cannot rest until the truth is known." As the vision faded, I stumbled back, gasping for breath. I was back in the library, the candle flickering back to life as if nothing had happened. Eliza's spirit stood before me, her eyes filled with hope and desperation. "I know what happened," I said, my voice steadying. "I promise I will tell your story." Her expression softened, and for a brief moment I could see the gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered before fading into the shadows. Determined to set things right, I hurried back to the living room, my heart racing with purpose. I grabbed a notebook from Mrs. Wilson's desk and began to write down everything I had seen, pouring my heart into the words, recounting Eliza's story of betrayal and loss. As the hours passed, I felt a sense of peace settling over the manor, the oppressive energy lifting as I wrote. When I finally finished, I placed the notebook on the mantelpiece beneath the mirror, a testament to Eliza's tragic fate. I could feel a warm breeze enveloping me, and for the first time that night, I felt safe. With dawn breaking outside, I left Maplewood Manor with a lightness in my heart. I had done what I promised, set Eliza's spirit free. As I walked away, I glanced back at the manor one last time. The sun rose behind it, casting golden light upon the windows, and I knew that Eliza was finally at peace.
Story number 7.
Halloween had always been my favorite holiday. Each year, the town of Eldridge transformed into a vibrant celebration of the macabre, with decorations lining every street. But there was one tradition that set this year apart from all the rest, the legend of the lantern. The townsfolk spoke of an old tale, one that was whispered among children and adults alike. It was said that on Halloween night, a mysterious lantern would appear at the edge of Blackwood Forest, illuminating the path for lost souls. If you dared to follow it, you might find the answers to your deepest questions, or perhaps your worst nightmares. My friends and I decided to test our bravery this Halloween. "Let's go find the lantern," Jake challenged, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "It'll be an adventure." At dusk, we donned our costumes, me as a ghost, Sarah as a witch, and Jake as a vampire, and set out for the forest. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to the fading light. The air was thick with anticipation, and the sounds of laughter from the town faded into an eerie silence. As we ventured deeper into the woods, I felt a chill creep down my spine. The path beneath our feet was uneven and tangled with roots, but we pressed on, drawn by the thrill of discovery. "It's just a story," I told myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. After what felt like hours, we stumbled into a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches twisting towards the sky, and there, nestled at the base, was a flickering lantern, its light warm and inviting. "There it is!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. "We found it!" But as we approached, an uneasy feeling washed over me. "Guys, are you sure we should get any closer?" I asked, my instincts screaming for caution. "Don't be a wuss!" Jake laughed, stepping forward. The lantern swayed gently, casting dancing shadows across the ground. "It's just a light." As we gathered around the lantern, I could feel a strange energy pulsating from it. The light flickered, illuminating the faces of my friends, but I noticed something odd. A faint mist began to swirl around us, growing thicker with each passing second. "Is it just me, or does it feel colder?" I whispered, glancing at Sarah. She nodded, her smile fading. "I don't like this." "Relax," Jake said, rolling his eyes. "It's probably just the wind." But as he spoke, the lantern's glow intensified, and the mist began to take form. Shapes emerged from the fog, figures with hollow eyes and twisted expressions. My heart raced as I realized we weren't alone. "Who dares to disturb us?" one of the figures hissed, its voice like rusted metal scraping against stone. Panic surged through me. "We're just looking for the lantern," I shouted, backing away. "Seeking answers, are you?" Another figure whispered, a chilling smile spreading across its face. "Every question comes at a cost." "Let's get out of here," Sarah cried, grabbing my arm. But it was too late. The lantern flickered violently, and the mist enveloped us. We were pulled into a whirlwind of shadows, disorienting us until we landed on the cold, hard ground. When the fog cleared, we found ourselves in a desolate landscape, the sky a swirling mass of dark clouds and pale light. "What just happened?" Jake gasped, looking around. I shivered, dread pooling in my stomach. "I think we've crossed over." In front of us stood a path leading to a series of doors, each one labeled with a different word. Regret, fear, loss, desire. The figures from before lingered at the edges of our vision, their expressions a mix of curiosity and malice. "Choose wisely," one of the figures whispered, gliding closer. "Every door holds a secret, but not all secrets are meant to be uncovered." "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't stay here," I said, feeling the weight of the spirits pressing against us. "We have to find a way back." Jake stepped forward, his gaze fixated on the desire door. "I want to know what I'm meant to do with my life," he declared. "Wait!" I shouted, but before I could stop him, he pushed the door open. A blinding light engulfed him, and we heard his voice calling out, "This is amazing!" But then it turned to a scream. I felt my heart drop. "Jake!" I yelled, reaching for him, but the door slammed shut. "What just happened?" Sarah gasped, fear gripping her. "We have to find him!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the air. We turned to the other doors, but dread settled in my stomach. I knew we couldn't linger here. "We can't open any more doors. We have to find a way back to the lantern." Just then, the fear door creaked open, revealing a dark void. I felt something tugging at my mind, whispering my deepest insecurities. I shook my head, trying to resist the pull, but the figure stepped forward, its eyes glinting with malevolence. "Face your fears, and you might find your way home," it hissed. "No, we can't," Sarah cried, but I felt a strange compulsion. The pull was too strong, and before I realized it, I was moving toward the door. "Don't," Sarah screamed, but it was too late. I stepped through the threshold, and the darkness enveloped me. I found myself in a dark room, the air heavy with despair. Shadows danced around me, morphing into figures from my past, failed tests, lost friendships, moments of heartbreak. Each one whispered their failures in my ear, dragging me down into the depths of my own mind. "No," I shouted, struggling against the tide of negativity. "I won't let you control me." With a surge of determination, I pushed through the darkness, forcing myself to confront each figure. "You don't define me," I yelled, the shadows shrinking away. In an instant, I was back in the void, the door still open behind me. I turned and rushed back through, collapsing into the clearing. "Are you okay?" Sarah rushed to my side, her eyes wide with concern. "I don't know," I panted, shaking with adrenaline. "But we need to find Jake." As we scrambled back to the lantern, I felt the energy shift. The mist thickened again, and the figures began to close in on us. "You must choose," they cried in unison. "No," I shouted, a surge of anger coursing through me. "We didn't come here to be trapped." The lantern flickered, casting a warm glow that pierced through the shadows. "Remember who you are," it seemed to say, its light growing brighter. "Jake!" I screamed into the night, my voice echoing. "We're coming for you." In that moment, the mist began to swirl violently, and the figures lunged at us. But with the lantern's light guiding us, we dashed towards the lost door, praying it would lead us to Jake. As I pushed it open, I found myself in a cold, sterile room, filled with memories of loss, faces of loved ones I had lost, moments I wished I could reclaim. A sense of grief washed over me, threatening to pull me under, but I couldn't let it consume me. "I remember them," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I carry them with me always." Suddenly, a figure stepped forward, Jake, looking pale but alive. "Get me out of here," he cried, desperation etched across his face. "Grab my hand," I shouted, reaching for him. Sarah joined me, and we pulled him back through the door just as the shadows lunged forward, desperate to keep us trapped. With a flash of light, we were back in the clearing, the lantern flickering before us. The shadows shrieked in frustration as they faded into the mist, leaving us gasping for breath. "We made it," Jake exclaimed, relief washing over his face. But before we could celebrate, the lantern dimmed, flickering one last time before extinguishing completely. The light that had guided us was gone. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "We remember," I replied, feeling a new sense of resolve. "We share our stories, our fears, and our losses. That's how we honor them." As we made our way back through the woods, the weight of our experience lingered in the air. We had faced the darkness together, and in doing so, we had become stronger. From that day on, we promised to share our stories every Halloween, not just to celebrate the holiday, but to honor those who had come before us, the lost souls, the forgotten ones, and the lessons they had taught us. Story the end.
Story number 8.
The autumn leaves crunched beneath my feet as I made my way through the overgrown path leading to the old Greywood estate. It was Halloween night, and I had come to retrieve some belongings for my grandmother, who had grown up in the manor before it fell into disrepair. Rumors swirled around Greywood. Some said it was haunted by the spirit of a young woman who had met a tragic end. I had always dismissed the tales, but tonight, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows stretched long, a chill crept up my spine. The estate loomed before me, its once grand structure now a skeletal silhouette against the darkening sky. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and I felt an inexplicable pull to step inside. Gathering my courage, I pushed the heavy front door open, its hinges creaking like a mournful sigh. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the dust of forgotten memories. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, and cobwebs hung like veils in the corners. I switched on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness and revealing glimpses of the past. A cracked mirror, a dusty chandelier, and furniture draped in sheets, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. As I explored, I felt a strange energy pulsating in the air, a sensation that both fascinated and terrified me. The deeper I ventured into the manor, the more I felt an unseen presence, a gentle whisper of sorrow that seemed to call my name. My heart raced as I passed a doorway leading to the grand ballroom, where I could almost hear the distant echo of laughter and music. "Is anyone here?" I called, my voice shaky, but only silence answered me. Feeling a mix of dread and curiosity, I continued down the hallway until I reached the staircase. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, but the whispers grew louder, urging me to go on. "Find her. Find the locket," they seemed to say. Taking a deep breath, I ascended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. At the top, I found myself in a narrow corridor lined with doors. One door stood slightly ajar, and I felt drawn to it. I pushed it open and stepped inside a dimly lit room, my flashlight illuminating the remnants of a once beautiful bedroom. The bed was covered with a tattered quilt, and the dresser held a mirror that reflected my startled face. But it was the small jewelry box on the nightstand that caught my eye. Intrigued, I approached it and opened the lid. Inside lay a delicate silver locket, intricately designed with swirling patterns. I picked it up, feeling its cool surface against my palm, and suddenly a rush of emotions surged through me. Joy, sorrow, "Sarah," a voice whispered, sending chills down my spine. The room grew colder, and I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a young woman in a flowing white gown, her long hair cascading like a waterfall. Her eyes, filled with sadness, locked onto mine. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, clutching the locket tightly. "I am Sarah," she said, her voice soft and ethereal. "I was once the lady of this house, but I never found peace. My love was stolen from me, and I am bound to this place, seeking what was lost." "What happened to you?" I asked, feeling drawn to her sorrow. "William," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He was my betrothed, but he was taken from me on the eve of our wedding. A jealous heart conspired against us. I was left alone, heartbroken and lost. The locket you hold is a symbol of our love, a connection to my past. I need it back to find peace." I felt an overwhelming sense of compassion for Sarah. "How can I help you?" I asked, my heart aching for her lost love. "The locket is a key to my memories," she explained. "You must uncover the truth of my fate. In doing so, you will set my spirit free." Determined to help her, I began to search the room for clues. I rifled through old letters, photographs, and dusty books, piecing together the fragments of her life. I discovered a hidden compartment in the dresser containing a faded letter addressed to Sarah from William. The words were filled with promises of love and devotion, but it ended abruptly, as if someone had intercepted it. "There's more to this story," I murmured, piecing together the timeline of betrayal and loss. As I read on, I found another name mentioned in the letter: Margaret, William's sister, who had always been envious of their relationship. "Margaret," I said aloud, feeling the weight of her jealousy hanging heavily in the air. "She must have been the one who caused the tragedy." Sarah nodded, her face pale with sorrow. "She could not bear to see us happy. In her jealousy, she plotted to tear us apart. You must find the truth. Reveal her betrayal." With renewed determination, I searched the manor for more evidence. As I explored the attic, I stumbled upon a trunk filled with old clothes and faded photographs. Among them was a portrait of William, looking handsome and regal, standing next to a woman who could only be Margaret. The expression on her face was one of rage disguised as love. Suddenly, I felt a cold draft sweep through the attic, and I turned to see Sarah standing beside me, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. "Look for the journal," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "It holds the truth of what she did." I frantically searched the trunk and found a small, leather-bound journal hidden beneath the clothes. As I flipped through the pages, my heart sank. The entries detailed Margaret's growing obsession with William and her hatred for Sarah. The final entry was a chilling confession, revealing how she had plotted to keep them apart, even going so far as to hide letters and spread lies about Sarah. "William must have never known the truth," I murmured, realization dawning upon me. "He thought you betrayed him." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "He died thinking I had rejected him. My heart shattered the day he was lost. I will make this right," I promised her, feeling a surge of resolve. "You will not be forgotten." As I clutched the journal, the air shimmered and the room shifted around us. I stood again in the bedroom, the locket still in my hand. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her spirit brightening. "You've uncovered the truth. Now I can finally rest." I placed the locket back in the jewelry box, and the moment I did, the room filled with a warm, golden light. Sarah smiled at me, her spirit shimmering like sunlight on water. "Remember me, not in sorrow, but in love. Thank you for freeing me." With that, she vanished, leaving behind a gentle breeze that swirled around me, carrying her essence into the ether. I left the Greywood estate as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight piercing the night. The house stood silent behind me, no longer a place of sorrow, but a testament to love's endurance. I knew I would tell Sarah and William's story, ensuring that their love would never be forgotten. Story the end.
Story number 9.
Halloween night had always been my favorite time of year. The crisp air filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sounds of laughter and festivities set the perfect backdrop for ghost stories. But this year, I found myself in the eerie woods of Raven Hollow, drawn by an age-old tale that had haunted my small town for generations, the legend of the Phantom of Raven Hollow. As darkness descended, I hiked deeper into the woods, my flashlight flickering against the gnarled trees. The stories warned of a spirit who roamed these woods, a woman in white searching for something lost long ago. Locals claimed she was the ghost of Eliza Mayfield, a woman who vanished mysteriously on Halloween night a century ago. I had heard about her tragic tale countless times, and tonight I was determined to uncover the truth. The moon hung high in the sky, casting silvery light that danced among the branches. I reached a clearing where an old stone well sat surrounded by wildflowers. Legend said that Eliza had visited this well every Halloween, hoping to catch a glimpse of her lost love, a man who had disappeared alongside her on that fateful night. I took a deep breath and approached the well, its stones cold and weathered, echoing the sadness of the past. "Hello?" I called out, half expecting a reply. The woods remained silent, but I felt an unsettling chill in the air, like a whisper on the wind. "Eliza?" I tried again, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. I stepped back, and to my horror, the moonlight revealed a figure emerging from the shadows, a woman in a flowing white dress, her long hair cascading like a waterfall around her shoulders. Her eyes glimmered with an otherworldly light, and her expression was one of longing and despair. "Eliza?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on me, filled with sorrow. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice soft yet echoing, as if the forest itself carried her words. "Have you come to help me?" I want to know what happened to you," I stammered, captivated by her presence. "The townspeople say you were lost long ago." "Lost," she echoed, her voice laced with sadness. "I was betrayed, left to wander these woods searching for my love. He was taken from me, and now I cannot rest." "Who betrayed you?" I asked, feeling compelled to uncover the truth. "Margaret," she whispered, her eyes darkening. "My sister. She was jealous of my happiness and sought to tear us apart. On this very night, she lured him away, leading us into the forest where she revealed her true intentions. In a fit of rage, I lost him, and my life in the process." I felt a shudder run through me, the weight of her story settling over my heart like a heavy cloak. "What happened that night?" I pressed, feeling the need to understand the full extent of her tragedy. "It was a betrayal of the deepest kind," Eliza said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Margaret took him to the old stone bridge that once spanned the river, claiming to confront him about our love. I followed them, desperate to protect what was mine, but it was too late. I arrived just as the bridge crumbled beneath them. I reached for him, but I fell, and then everything went dark. Tears filled my eyes as I imagined her desperate struggle, the pain of losing her love to her sister's jealousy. "You never found peace," I said softly, feeling a surge of sympathy for her plight. "No," she replied, the sorrow etched on her face. "I have been bound to these woods, trapped between this world and the next, waiting for someone to remember my story, to set me free." Determined to help her, I asked, "What do I need to do?" "Find the bridge," she instructed, her voice gaining strength. "You must uncover the truth of that night. There is a locket hidden near the old stones, a symbol of my love. Only by returning it to the well will I finally find peace." I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose swell within me. "I'll find it, I promise." As I turned to leave the clearing, the atmosphere shifted, the air thickening with tension. Shadows danced among the trees, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The path seemed to twist and turn, making it hard to navigate as I followed the remnants of Eliza's past. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon the remnants of the old stone bridge. It lay in ruins, moss-covered and weathered, the water rushing beneath it, dark and foreboding. I approached cautiously, the memory of Eliza's love and loss weighing heavily on my heart. Searching among the stones, I finally spotted something glinting in the fading light. I knelt beside the rubble, brushing away the dirt, and uncovered a beautiful silver locket, intricately engraved with swirling patterns. I could feel its warmth against my palm, and as I opened it, a faded photograph of Eliza and her love stared back at me. "This is it," I whispered, holding it close to my heart. I felt a surge of energy, as if the locket itself was alive with the emotions it had witnessed. Rushing back to the well, I clutched the locket tightly, my heart racing. I reached the clearing just as the moon reached its zenith, illuminating the night with an ethereal glow. I stood before the well, feeling Eliza's presence beside me, urging me on. "This is for you," I said, holding the locket over the well. "You deserve to be free." With a deep breath, I let the locket fall into the darkness, the sound of it hitting the water echoing through the silence. As I stood there, a sudden calm washed over me, and the wind began to swirl, lifting leaves and petals into the air. Eliza appeared before me, her face radiant and peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have set me free." In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of love and warmth, as if the woods themselves were embracing me. The shadows receded and the forest transformed, vibrant and alive once more. "Remember my story," Eliza said, her spirit glowing with a soft light. "Tell it so that no one forgets the love that was lost. I will always be with you." With that, she faded into the light of the moon, her spirit finally at rest. I stood in the clearing, my heart filled with a profound sense of peace, knowing I had helped her find the closure she had longed for. As I made my way back through the woods, the world felt different, brighter, more alive. I knew that I would carry Eliza's story with me, sharing it with others so that her love would never be forgotten.
Story number 10.
Halloween had always brought with it a sense of magic and mystery, but this year felt different. As I pulled into Willow Creek, I was struck by the unsettling quiet of the town. The autumn leaves rustled in the cool breeze, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. Stories of Willow Creek's haunted past filled my mind as I parked my car outside the old library, a place rumored to be home to restless spirits. The library stood at the end of a narrow street, its architecture a mix of Gothic and Victorian styles, with towering windows and ivy creeping up the walls. It was said that the spirit of Amelia Carter, a librarian who mysteriously vanished decades ago, haunted its halls, still searching for the one book that could unlock the secrets of her past. With a deep breath, I stepped inside. The heavy wooden doors creaked as I pushed them open, and the smell of aged paper and dust enveloped me. The dimly lit interior was filled with towering shelves, each lined with books that whispered tales of their own. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter and conversation from times long gone. "Amelia?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. I didn't really expect a response, but the stillness felt oppressive. As I wandered through the aisles, a chill crept down my spine, and I felt as though I was being watched. The flickering lights overhead only added to the eerie atmosphere. I continued deeper into the library until I reached a section dedicated to local history. There, among the dusty volumes, I stumbled upon a tattered journal titled The Chronicles of Willow Creek. My heart raced as I opened it, the pages yellowed with age. The journal recounted the history of the town, including Amelia's tragic tale. She had been a beloved librarian, known for her kindness and passion for books. But one fateful night, during a fierce storm, she had vanished without a trace, leaving the town in shock. Some claimed they had seen her wandering the streets, her figure illuminated by an ethereal glow. As I read on, the temperature in the library dropped, and I heard a faint whisper echoing through the aisles. "Help me." The voice was soft and sorrowful, but it sent a shiver down my spine. My instincts told me to leave, but something compelled me to stay. "Amelia, is that you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The whisper faded, replaced by the sound of pages turning. I turned to see a book lying open on a nearby table. It was The Secret Garden, a title that held a special place in my heart. I approached the table, drawn to the book as if it were calling out to me. As I reached for the book, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness for a brief moment. When the lights returned, I found myself standing not in the library, but in a lush garden filled with blooming flowers and vibrant colors. Confusion washed over me as I looked around, realizing I was no longer alone. Before me stood a figure, her long hair flowing like silk and her eyes shimmering with a haunting beauty. "You found me," she said, her voice echoing softly in the air. "I've waited so long for someone to remember." "Amelia?" I stammered, the realization hitting me like a wave. "Is it really you?" "Yes," she replied, a bittersweet smile gracing her lips. "I am trapped between this world and the next, bound to the pages of my story. I need your help to find the book that holds the key to my freedom." "What book?" I asked, feeling the weight of her words. "The Book of Whispers," she said, her gaze pleading. "It contains the secrets of Willow Creek, but it was hidden away when I disappeared. Only by retrieving it can I break the curse that binds me to this place." "Where can I find it?" I asked, determination rising within me. "Return to the library," she instructed, her voice filled with urgency. "The book lies in the archives, beneath the floorboards of the main reading room. But beware, for there are those who do not wish for it to be found." As she spoke, the vibrant garden began to fade, replaced once again by the dimly lit library. I found myself back at the table, the open book still resting there. Heart racing, I rushed toward the reading room, my footsteps echoing against the wooden floor. The main reading room was vast, with high ceilings and rows of tables scattered throughout. I scanned the area, searching for a way to access the archives. In the corner, I noticed a worn carpet that seemed out of place. Kneeling down, I tugged at the edge, revealing a trapdoor hidden beneath. With a surge of adrenaline, I pried it open, revealing a dark staircase leading down into the depths of the library. Taking a deep breath, I descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. As I reached the bottom, I found myself in a small room filled with cobwebs and dust-covered crates. I searched through the crates, my hands trembling with anticipation. Finally, I spotted a dusty, leather-bound book resting on a shelf in the far corner. It was the Book of Whispers. I grasped it tightly, feeling its power pulse beneath my fingertips. But just as I turned to leave, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. A cold voice echoed through the room. "You shouldn't have come here." A dark figure loomed before me, its eyes glowing like embers. Panic surged within me as I realized the spirit of the librarian's jealous rival had awakened. "You will not take it from me," the spirit hissed, lunging toward me. I clutched the book to my chest and sprinted up the stairs, the spirit hot on my heels. As I burst into the reading room, I could hear the whispers of the souls trapped within the library, urging me to escape. "Amelia, I have the book," I shouted, hoping she could hear me. The lights flickered again, illuminating the path to the exit. I raced toward the door, the spirit's wails echoing in my ears. Just as I reached the threshold, I felt a cold hand grasp my shoulder, freezing me in place. "You will pay for your trespass," the spirit growled, its grip tightening. In that moment, I remembered Amelia's words. I turned and held the Book of Whispers high. "I release you," I cried, my voice filled with determination. The book pulsed with energy, and a brilliant light enveloped the room. The spirit recoiled, its form dissipating as the light surged forth. "No," it shrieked, fading into the shadows. The warmth of the light spread through the library, washing away the darkness and revealing the beauty hidden within. I felt a presence beside me, and I turned to see Amelia standing there, her spirit radiant and free. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've broken the curse." With that, the library transformed around us, the walls brightening and the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The spirits trapped within the library began to rise, their forms shimmering as they embraced the light. "Thank you," Amelia whispered, her eyes shining with joy. "You have freed us all. Remember our story and carry the light of knowledge with you." As the last of the spirits ascended, Amelia smiled at me one final time before fading into the light. I stood in the library, feeling the warmth of their gratitude surround me. I knew that I had not only uncovered the truth, but had become part of something much greater. As I walked out of the library, the moon hung high in the sky, illuminating my path. I looked back at the old building, now alive with energy, knowing that the whispers of Willow Creek would continue to tell their tales. Story the end.